In other words, I have the opportunity to see it differently. So, it's not that I made up the thing that happened. Whatever thing happened, it happened. We're not going to go into some unfortunate sort of denial saying that these events didn't occur. Although, if we really look closely enough, maybe they didn't. But that's not the point. The point is, yes, something seems to have occurred. Something occurred that bothered me. Something occurred that I wanted to get upset about. And so that's an important admission. But then to realize that it is the way that I'm seeing it that I've made up. And since I've made it up, since I have decided how I'm going to react, then I have the ability to decide something different. And I could just kind of go through my mind and do some kind of intellectual analysis of the whole thing, and I can say, well, I could, something better than just yelling at somebody or worse would be to realize that the only reason that they could have said, done, participated in something that I felt like put me in danger or harmed me in some way, the only way that they could have done that is if they were hurting. The only way they could attempt to cause harm to me is if they were hurting. Now, I also need to recognize, as we've said many times, that if I noticed that I'm probably hurting too. And so then the forgiveness that happens as a result of all this is to see the truth that neither one of us have to be hurting. To see through this veneer, to see through this apparent situation to the truth of the fact that we are one. And then this is where interaction comes from. The result of going within into the quiet place is love. Love comes forth in response to fear. So Jesus says, love one another as I have loved you. Now, he's setting himself as an example, right? The way I'm loving you. I'm extending this unconditional love to you. Now notice that at least the accounts that we have, him giving unconditional love to those around him did not necessarily mean that he didn't point out when they were off track. Right? But we think about, when you look at how he points the stuff out, he tells a story, so love one another as I have loved you. So this example of saying we're all connected, the example of saying that we are all, when he gives the instruction of the Lord's Prayer, how to pray, he gives the instruction. He tells people, he says, go in your closet, close the door. Now this is really important. This is really important because we see today, and we've heard, people want to be some of us want to be very showy in our prayers. We want people to know that we are praying. We want to make it a deal, right? So everybody knows. And he gives specific instructions about that, saying then that's your reward. Your reward for your prayer, if you make loud prayers, your reward is that people heard you say loud prayers. That's it. But go into your closet and close the door. And then he prepares and he says, Our Father. He doesn't say, my Father. He says, Our Father. So this is something shared then. And this is so integral to the idea that we are all children of God. All brothers and sisters, children of God. So, because of this strength in me, I am able to deal with whatever comes in a calm and loving manner. I might not. But it's really important that I know that I can. The reason when I know I can, first I started to know I could because somebody else told me that was possible. Because there was a time when all of that kind of behavior, reacting to situations, was just automatic behavior. and someone shared with me that it was possible to act some way different than that. And then not only did somebody say it to me, I actually observed other people doing it. Now I know that before this event, when I first started to notice this, that there were other people in my life that were actually doing that. They were interacting and not reacting. But for me, so caught up in my own self-centeredness, I never saw that. I didn't notice. This really, I guess, is the crux of it, is because in that place of self-centeredness, there's a whole bunch of stuff that escapes our attention because we're locked in. We're locked into it. So I heard that it was possible. I saw other people doing the same thing. And then this very simple thing, just try it. Just try this. If you find yourself getting into a bad streak where you're angry and you're reacting to things, and by the way, this doesn't necessarily mean that you just bite somebody's head. If it's going on in your mind, it's worth doing this little exercise. Even now, if you can do the first part, you do the first part right, stop, don't do anything. That's much better than just letting it come out of your mouth or moving into some kind of bad action. But that still keep us in a place of suffering, because it's still all just rolling around in our mind, and we're having these projections about, I should have said this, and I'm going to do that, and the next time, all of that kind of stuff. If we just stop at abstinence, that's not enough. The suffering continues. But so any time that you feel that turmoil inside, today, tomorrow, through the week, just take a moment. Don't do anything. Remind yourself that you made up your whole reaction. Oh, by the way, if you're here with your spouse or you've got a friend and they do something that you're about to react to, you don't have to remind them. Right? If you do something, then you don't have to remind them of this. Just remind yourself. So this strength is always there. The strength, and what it is, it's the strength to take responsibility for our lives. To take responsibility for our lives. Now by the way, this is a lesson that I give twice a year. Now it's not the same. It looks similar because it's this. I give this lesson twice a year. Every lesson I give twice a year. Now hopefully I mix some other stuff in there, but this lesson we could get it twice a year. And but this idea of being able to be responsible for our lives. And that begins with being responsible for our actions. So let's say that I wasn't able to stop myself. And I think that happened at least once yesterday. That I was not able to stop myself and I reacted to what was going on. I did that, okay? I need to take responsibility for that. So I reacted to what I perceived was what I perceive as an attack, right? I perceive it as an insult. I perceive it as some slight, some disrespect. Now, it's very easy to say, well, if they wouldn't have done this, if they wouldn't have done that, then I wouldn't have, right? But that doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about. We're talking about having the strength within to take responsibility. So whatever the other person did, I still need to take responsibility for what I did. It's like a basic principle. If we avoid this principle, we're never going to grow up. It's just not going to happen. So yes, and so I am not even suggesting that what the other person may have done is okay or justified or any of that other kind of stuff. I'm just saying I just have to take responsibility for my stuff. That's it. And when I take responsibility for my own actions, when I take responsibility for the stuff that I have done or said, those things that were hurtful to myself or others, then those events will not keep me from my good. When I take responsibility. If I don't take responsibility, there's this huge block in the flow, because it's just like sitting there. It's a regret. It's a resentment. It's just sitting there. So I'm going to take this responsibility. This is just an error. It's a mistake. It is not an indelible stain upon your soul. And that may sound dramatic, but if we keep these things in mind, if we hold to these regrets, then we're always tied to them. If they keep going through our, and really, the only reason that we have to hold to them is because we haven't really taken responsibility. Once we take, and it's not blame, by the way. I'm not talking about blame. I'm not going to take the blame. I'm not going to take the blame. I'm going to do my best not to give you the blame. Because blame is different. Because blame then, this idea of finding fault is just not helpful. It doesn't help us move forward. It doesn't help solve the problem. It's just like, it's a way of shifting guilt onto someone else. First, I may shift it to myself and take a bunch of blame, but pretty soon I'm going to be looking around to see you do something bad so I can kind of throw that over onto you. Because I don't want to just be thinking about how bad I am. So, responsibility is different than blame. So I'm taking responsibility, and that we put on the sign, we said, the last time we did this, it said response on one side and able on the other side. Able response, or responsible. So this just cuts it right. It's such a simple thing. When I admit to myself, this was me. I did this. This is now also important, and I can't overstate the importance of this. This does not mean we take responsibility for what the other person did. This is another thing that we can do. It can either be everybody else's fault, or it can all be our fault, and this is the reason they're treating us bad is because we're bad. That's not helpful either. So we take responsibility for our actions. These next teachings, they're not mine. They were taught to me, and I'm still trying to learn them, but they can be very difficult. I'm responsible for my feelings. I'm responsible for how I feel. And I don't know how many times I said it. I don't know how many times I heard it. I can't help how I feel. That's just how I feel. I can't help it. It turns out I can help it. I can help it. I don't have to feel this way. I'm responsible for my feelings. My feelings, and it's important, these are the things that motivate me to act. These feelings jump up in me. I feel threatened. I feel afraid. I feel angry. I feel, and then this next thing happens. But it can also immobilize me. It can make me not do anything. My feelings can make me just frozen with fear. And when I say frozen with fear, I don't mean like having a palsy, or I don't mean like just being trembling in the corner. Frozen with fear can be as simple as you've got a task that needs to be done. Something just something practical that needs to be done. Some bill needs to be paid. Some creditor needs to be called. Something that needs, and we just avoid it. Well, this is being paralyzed with fear. Signing up for health care. We don't think we're terrified, but for some reason, fear is like keeping us from moving forward into action. So these feelings are responsible for many rash actions. They cause many lost opportunities. So we want to see it a little bit differently. We really can change how we feel. We do not have to be a slave to those feelings. So we realize where they come from. The feeling comes from a thought. Feeling is generated directly out of a thought. I think something, and that triggers a chemical, it actually triggers a chemical reaction in the body, which then starts this generation of fear, which either has me doing rash things or not doing anything at all. So I'm responsible for my thoughts. Wait a minute. I don't know how you can even say that, because thoughts just come. This was my argument. Thoughts just come to mind. They're just, boom, there it is. It's a thought. It's there. I didn't try to think it. It just showed up. Well, that's true. We can't stop thoughts from just coming to our minds, at least not at first. But we can do something with that thought when it does come. So a thought comes to mind, generates a feeling. So what if I said, when the thought comes to mind, what if I said, wait, hold on, let me change that thought? What if I actually said, and it seems corny, it is also humbling, is to ask Spirit, relieve me of this thought. Give me a better one. What it does, immediately, it short-circuits the ego. Pushes the ego right out of the way, puts us in a position of quiet, and a new thought will come. I don't know how many times I've said it, I'll keep saying it. I walked around for years with a list in my pocket of thoughts. Not the same list all the time, but a list of thoughts. And when I would really get upset, I would take that thing out and I would look, and they were just affirmations. If God be with me, who can stand against me? Who can be against me? And this is a psalm that has been used many times to say God's on my side, so therefore I'm going to win the conflict. That's not what it means at all. What it means is if God is with me, and I actually know that God is with me, there won't be any conflict. I won't get involved in the conflict in the first place. And it actually does take two to get into a conflict. Sometimes we don't even realize what part we played in it until later we looked at it. I know that car came out of nowhere, hit me. How could that be my fault? Don't rack your brain. Just take responsibility for your part. What did you do afterwards? What happened then? Did you get out of the car and start screaming? Okay. So I'm responsible for my thoughts. We have the ability to change our thinking. We may not be able to stop that particular thought that comes to mind, but we can certainly decide what we're going to do after we think it. We can change the thought. Sometimes it is so delicious to hold on to the bad thoughts because they're so justified. Yes, I know I'm upset with this person for this and that or the other reason, and they deserve it. But the question you want to ask yourself is, do you deserve it? Do you deserve to suffer because of the thought? Wouldn't it be better to just release it and get another thought? Anytime a negative